Introduction.
Hello, everyone. I'm Regina Gill, founder, executive director of Gold Coast Arts. And today we're going to be exploring humor. What is funny? And we're going to be talking to three comics. One of them is a producer of comedy shows. And it'll all be part of our Cultural Insider series, where we are talking to interesting people about what it is that they do in the world of the arts. Today we've got Marla Schultz with us. Marla is a headlining stand-up comedian, a speaker, and an actress. For 2 years, she toured with Chelsea Handler, another well-known name, entertained the US military overseas, and is a regular on Sirius XM Insight's Tell Me Everything with John Fugelsang. She's featured in the documentaries The Big Talk Over Dinner and the award-winning You're Gorgeous, I Love Your Shirt, a look inside the crisis of bullying and mental health. As an advocate for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, in your own voice speaker, she regularly presents to mental health practitioners, graduate psychology students, and hospitalized patients, sharing her own story of recovery from anxiety and depression. Her TV acting roles include CBS Star's Power, TNT's Men of a Certain Age, FX's Dirt, Comics Unleashed with Byron Allen, and Oxygen's Girls Behaving Badly. She's been featured on The Dr. Oz Show, Good Day New York, WPIX 11 News, CBS TV, and MSNBC. Marla has performed at the Nantucket, Lucille Ball, Los Angeles, Raleigh's Oak City, and Boston's Women Comedy Festivals. With Marla today, we have with us Rich Walker. Rich is a headlining comedian who performs at venues around the country. He's a longtime veteran of quality stand-up He's a longtime veteran of quality stand-up comedy and one of the most versatile performers we have today. He was voted first place winner of the Best of Long Island in 2011 and 2012 by the Long Island Press. And Rich has been seen performing at some of the country's top comedy clubs, colleges, venues, and benefit events. Rich has been delighted and honored to share the stage with some of show business's biggest names, such as Ray Romano, Kevin James, Dom Herrera, and Johnny Maestro of the Brooklyn Bridge. He's also a proud co-founder and current professor of Stand-Up University, a school designed for the teaching of stand-up comedy on Long Island. A true blue modern day entertainer, Rich makes fun of everyday predicaments we all get ourselves into, from odd shopping situations to marriage and kids, and probably to what's going on today with our enforced isolation because of the COVID virus. You'll see a little bit of Lou Costello in him with a twist of Buddy Hackett, and he's always funny. You will enjoy meeting Rich Walker. Paul Anthony is a New York-based comedian and producer best known for his project, the Long Island Comedy Festival. Paul has performed and produced comedy shows at top theater venues across the country, especially in the Northeast. Other projects of his include the Berkshire Comedy Festival, New Year's Laugh-In Eve, Mom's Night Out, and the 50 Plus Comedy Tour, which many of you tuning in today may have enjoyed at the Gold Coast Arts Center over the years. In 2018, Paul gave a TEDx talk entitled The Power of Laughter. We are very, very happy to welcome Marla Schultz, Rich Walker, and Paul Anthony to the first edition of our exploration of What's So Funny. Paul, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having us, Regina Gill.
Thanks for having us. It's an honor.
Well, it's a pleasure for me. I mean, if there's anything that I love more than laughing, I don't really know what it is. And in talking with Paul over the last couple of days, we covered a couple of topics, and I wanted to throw them at you. And the first one, and you all feel free to, you don't have to raise your hand. You can just, this is very informal, just jump in and say whatever occurs. I see you, Rich. Were you funny in school? A lot of people say they were the
I'm kidding. Yeah, I
No?
was. In my high school, my junior high school, Finley Junior High in Huntington, the prediction yearbook was to be a comedian.
Wow.
Really? Well,
Yes.
okay, so that's one. How about you guys?
Go
All
ahead,
right,
Paul.
I want to get a copy of that yearbook. I'm going to buy one on Amazon.
Oh, there
I
it
want to
is.
see. I want to see who wrote that. In school, I took school very seriously. I was like a really good student. But I did joke around. I was not the class clown. I was too nervous to be a class clown. But I used to hang out with the class clowns. So my friends were all the cut-ups. So through what do you call that? Through assimilation or whatever the term is, association.
Osmosis.
Osmosis. Yes, through osmosis. Yes.
Okay. And how about
Paul
you, Rich?
is like the best laugher in the whole world. That's why comedians, well, he's a comedian now, but I mean, that's why the class clowns flocked around him.
Is he
Because
so fun?
That was
he
a good
must be like
audience.
10 times
Absolutely.
funnier than I
That was a
am.
good audience.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah. And my
that's what
yearbook said least likely to be a comedian. Most likely to attend a Marla Schultz comedy show was really what it said in my
Alrighty.
yearbook.
Alrighty.
How about you, Rich? Were you funny in school?
I was always the class clown, but I was terrified to be on stage. I'll never forget when I was in 7th grade, I joined the school play, and my one line, it was carousel, and it was the day before the show. He goes, this line isn't taken, and it was the line was, hey Nelly, got any of them donuts fried yet? But my line right after that is, yeah, how about some of them hot apple turnovers? So we went through the whole carousel going on stage, everything. It gets up to me, and the other kid goes, hey Nelly, got any of them donuts fried yet? And I go, how about some donuts? And he goes, Mr. Walker, are you sure you go to this school? And he took away the line. I didn't even have a line in 7th grade. My heart was pounding through my chest, and you could see it all over me. But in the classroom, that was my thing. I loved it. I loved entertaining. And I'm not bragging. I just said I hated school and I hated learning. So why not disrupt it for everybody else? And that's what I did. I was very good at it.
Okay, so then here's another question. You've got a lot of people, a lot of kids and grown-ups are going to be listening here today, I'm pretty sure. And when they hear you say that, there'll be people who relate to that. There'll be kids who relate to that, and parents who say, "Oh, so that's why he does what he does." But when did you actually know or feel that you were funny, stage or no stage, just as a kid? When did you think, "Oh, I mean, I can make them laugh"?
Can I answer that first?
Sure.
Please.
I've always wanted to do stand-up comedy. I've watched Johnny Carson as a kid. My mother used to let me stay up and watch the monologue every night. I love the energy of the Tonight Show with the curtain, the color curtain, and Johnny coming out. And I loved watching the comedian every Friday night. So I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I didn't do it until I was 29 years old, when my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, her mother cut an ad out in the paper and said, bring your best 5 minutes down to an open mic night. And I don't know if Paul and Marla remember, it was the Long Island Cafe. And it was I did 15 minutes my first night, and they were flagging me to get off after 4 minutes, but I didn't know what the light was.
Hilarious.
So I was hooked, and I've been doing it ever since, 29. I couldn't get enough of it.
Amazing.
So 29.
That is cool.
That is very
Marla?
cool.
I first of all, my father had an encyclopedic memory of jokes, and he could call up a joke for any situation. But I found that I loved the kick from making people laugh, and also it connected me to so many people. Especially, I mean, you think about when you see a baby, one of the first things you want to do besides, blowing bubbles on their belly is to make them laugh and to get them giggle. And it's like the first instant connection, and you like being with that baby or that person. Also, I got bullied in junior high school because we moved to a new neighborhood and I was a late bloomer. And I found that, you know, the tough girls, like if you could make somebody laugh and deflect any kind of aggression and turn a situation, I felt like that became my superpower. So if you know, just walking into any room, or even now, if I sense there's like any kind of somebody's pissed or they're angry or they're just like a jerk, you hit them with a joke and it just flips the situation and it almost puts you back in control. So laughter has been my lifeline, and it also makes me feel better. You know, even though it's not just about me, but it's like, why not, especially today, make somebody laugh? It's like, it just takes the pressure off of any situation.
It is. It truly is.
Marla, why'd you have to give such a philosophical answer? Mine was so stupid compared to yours.
No.
Hey, listen, it's not about compare and despair, Rich. You're brilliantly funny. And you're also one of the really good guys. You know, you don't hit people with like Meshuggah stuff, you know?
Right.
You're funny.
Right. Paul is more Meshuggah.
Much more Meshuggah.
Yes, 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 yes.
Much more.
When did you?
Or isn't it Gagoots? Gagoots?
Wait a second. Paul, when did you decide that you weren't just meant to be an audience for your funny friends, but that you were actually funny too?
I would say that it started with my family. I found that whenever we had family gatherings, that my relatives thought I was funny. And when I was young, my dad bought a like a VHS camera. Do you remember when the VHS cameras came out?
Yes.
And it actually had the VHS tape. The tape was inside the camera. This giant.
Wow.
The tape was like the size of a laptop. And we would go out and we would film like these ridiculous skits. I was always the person in the skit. And we would go and then we would come back at, like on Thanksgiving. And that was the entertainment for the night. We would just watch the tape over and over. And I just got hooked on, you know, the fact that people, my aunt still has the tapes and will play them from, you know, from
Hilarious.
time to time. I was like a
You
teenager.
gotta show them at the beginning. At the beginning of your shows, you should put them up on the
That's not a bad idea. Thank you, Rich. I knew something would come. I knew something good would come out of this. Thank you.
The Marx Brothers always said that they went into comedy because they, the five of them, loved to hear their mother laugh. And nobody made her laugh like her sons. And it was just a natural transition. And
Yes.
Robin Williams said the same thing about his mother. And Billy Crystal said the same thing about his. But that's a thing. So obviously that was true for you, Paul.
Very much so.
Yeah. What about you guys? Was that also something your family thought you guys were funny?
Oh, laughter was a huge part of our family gatherings as well. And we also, you know, would film things, but we also love to take, you know, the Australians, they say like extracting the Mickey or taking the piss out of somebody, but just laughing at each other's foibles and idiosyncrasies and just insane behavior. It was a way of pointing things out, but also laughing. Yeah, I have a very funny family. Very funny family.
You're lucky.
My family do not think I am funny.
No.
They won't give me an inch. They come to my shows every now and then after the show, they don't say anything. Like they're not like, you know, if we went out for drinks after, they wouldn't even say a word to me. You were great. You were so funny. Nothing. Zero. My parents were both funny. My mother and father were both very dry sense of humor. My father would tell a story, but you never knew whether it was true or not true, you know? And I think that's what I got. I got a lot of my humor from. Both of them were like, wait, was he really in a bank robbery? You know, like.
Right.
Or did you make, where did you perform? You knew you were funny. You had a lot of family feedback that made you feel good about it and feel successful and empowered and whatever that means in terms of being funny. But where did you perform first professionally, when you actually knew you could even might even be able to make a living in it?
Go ahead, Paul.
I'll go first, but because my story is probably very different from most comedians. The first time I ever tried stand-up comedy was when I was an undergraduate at college, freshman year, and I learned a lesson that night. I had about 5 minutes of my own material about the students and what was going on at the school, and it killed. And then I went in and I started doing an impersonation of Steve Martin, and it absolutely completely tanked. And I didn't do stand up again for I think about 10 years. Ironically, I was at another college. I was at a graduate school, and this was 10 years later. I was at graduate school, and at the end of the semester, they had a like an end of semester talent night, and they were looking for someone to MC, and no one was willing to do it. And I was like, I'll MC. And they're like, do you have any experience? I'm like, no. I'm like, but no one else is stepping up. And I wrote like 10 different skits about the professors and the students, and it absolutely killed. And it was after that when I came back after graduate school, I started going out to open mics and what have you, and that's how I got that. That's how it all evolved. But it was really the two college experiences. One was horrible, and then, but just 10 years later.
Look at that.
Marla, what about you?
It was the first time I started performing was Stephen Rosenfield. He runs this in New York City. I started in New York. When I was in high school, I used to sneak into the place in Huntington, Richie Minervini, East Side Comedy Club.
Sure.
And I was, I really wanted to do it, but it terrified me. And then when I moved to the city in the 90s, I studied with Stephen Rosenfield, and I couldn't hear the laughter because my anxiety was like off the charts. And I worked with him for about 2 years, and we used to do shows down in the Greenwich Village, Rose's Turn, and oh my God, I'm blanking on all the places, but all those little cabarets.
Yes.
My mother's place. So that's when I first started, and it took a while to kind of settle and be able to hear the audience laughing, if that makes any sense, because I had such stage fright.
Isn't it amazing? How do comedians have such stage fright, but yet this is what we want to do, and maybe it's the thrill.
The thrill and gluttons.
There's a famous story about Laurence Olivier, that there was never a single time that he was about to go on stage that he didn't go to his dressing room and throw up from stage fright.
I believe
it wasn't bulimia?
No.
I once showed up at a comedy club, and it was packed, and I went out the back door and to throw up. And I never really threw up, but I used to have dry heaves that like that.
You don't need to demonstrate.
And I went out back, and Marla and Paul will know, Tim Gage, when I go out the back door, he was already against the building throwing up. And side by side, we stood there going, like a true story.
Wow.
But I knew. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You'll forget.
I already have. No, I was going to say, the only time I threw up like after a performance was 2 of my biggest bombs. Like I felt like I was gut punched, and I was like, sorry, Paul. But yeah,
no worries. 2
huge bombs. I threw up after
Wow.
yeah.
And then the pandemic hit.
Yes. And now we're doing Zoom shows.
Let's walk away from vomiting for a moment, and let's think about. So now we're fast forwarding. So now you're set. You're vomiting. You're not vomiting. You're feeling more confident. You're not. You're still nervous, but you're doing it. Out of all the clubs that you've played, which one became or situation, maybe not even a club, maybe it was a certain festival or whatever. Which ones or one are among your favorites? Where do you
Rich?
like?
Rich. Okay, first of all, I played all the comedy clubs, but I was never a comedy club person. I
Okay.
much prefer, and I'm not just saying this, like Paul does beautiful shows at theaters. I've done a lot of mostly private stuff. I've done, you know, Knights of Columbus's, Elks Lodges. I went that route. Like I didn't, and like Paul does theaters. He does actually everything down from, you know, assisted living homes to, you know, to the biggest theaters. No, but I'm saying it's a compliment. And that's what I geared. I never like to pigeonhole myself into a comedy club and just do comedy clubs. To me, you know, I went the theater route, and the private functions I think is the most fun. You know, you have a very big variety of audiences, and that's I always felt that was the powerhouse to do gigs for.
Can I jump in here, Marla? You mind if I jump in?
Yeah.
So
No.
my route was very untraditional because, to Rich's point, when I started doing stand up and after I did like open mics for about a year, and I would go into the city to stand up New York once or twice, sometimes 3 times a month, and do their open mic nights, and it was an unbelievable experience. Met a lot of great people. But what I realized was that, you know, living on Long Island and going into the city was really a big undertaking. So, and the open mic nights on Long Island was so limited that I literally started producing shows on my own in order to get stage time. And that's how the comedy festival basically was launched, is that I started doing these shows. And to Rich's point, we started doing them at theater venues because the comedy clubs literally were too difficult to work with. They had their business model. They had the way they like to do things. And we tried working with them the first year and it just didn't work out. So we gravitated and pivoted to just doing theater venues. And that's really where I do most of the shows now. And it's been very successful. I will say we do 50+ communities, not assisted not assisted living, as
No,
Rich
but I went lower.
misspoke.
From
It really was, he
assisted living
misspoke.
all the way up. You know,
Clarification.
up is the 50 and older communities. It's higher than that. So I went, you do everything, a whole range from here to here, right?
Right. You may have exaggerated a little bit. That's what I'm trying to point out.
Let me say one thing on
Please.
that. I did a show for you, and I was backstage at a theater, and it was the Patchogue Theater, and they put out like a craft services table for us, like
Yes.
cheeses and waters and sodas, and it was a big, huge table. And I was standing next to another comedian who only did really comedy clubs, and he goes, "Wow, look at this! I never say anything like this." I go, "See, there is a world beyond the comedy club."
That's
It really
funny.
is.
Yeah, comedy clubs don't give you anything.
I'm glad you
No.
brought
A little bit. Well, they do feed you though. You know, the ones on Long Island feed you. You know, they give
Oh,
Oh
you.
yeah.
Okay, you would know better
They're
than
good.
I.
Yeah.
I went the traditional route. You know, I lived on Long Island, moved to the city, and I would run around and do all the open mics. And then the bringer shows started, and I had a ton of friends, and they used to love coming out. But my home club was the comic strip. And back then, a guy, Lucian Hold, who is famous, it took me 7 times to pass. And it was this whole production. Yeah. And getting into the strip was like the club. You'd have to stand online. You get a lottery ticket. You would come back. The MC would vet you. And if she passed you, then you had to go talk to Lucian. And he would be like, I already have a brunette comedian, sorry. And it took like 7 times until I auditioned for the Montreal Comedy Festival, and I destroyed. He was like, well, I've given you every excuse in the book. I guess you could call in your avails. And that was, damn, I'm sorry, my phone's supposed to be on Do Not Disturb, but that I started that route, and then I moved out to LA. And I was there for 10 years, and getting into the improv had the same cachet as being at the Strip or Caroline's. But I have other favorite clubs, but my new favorite is Governors on Long Island. I feel like I'm home, and you can say whatever you want, and I'm around amazing Long Island comedians who, in my humble opinion, I think are the funniest comedians out there.
Super. Well, certainly there are a lot of them that have done very well, like Ray Romano's out there for his Long Island, right? And does Jerry Seinfeld qualify as Long Island if he was Queens?
Yeah, Massapequa.
It was from
He was
Massapequa.
Massapequa, he's
Yeah.
Long Island.
And
He
Billy
really,
Crystal, right?
but he made his career in the city.
Yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld.
But he honed his craft at home on Long Island, just
No,
like you.
I don't think, did he?
No, he started in the city.
He went right in, very
Yeah.
early.
80s.
There was a time when you mentioned the Tonight Show before. There was a time when comics used to say that they felt that they had hit it when they got a gig on the Tonight Show, and that was like a touchstone. What is that touchstone today? Is there a touchstone today, or do you just do what you do and it becomes word of mouth? How does that work?
Can I just say one thing about the Tonight Show? Back then, the reason why it was a touchstone is one appearance would launch your career. And there's nothing like that now. Like if you did The Late Show or, Seth Meyers or Kimmel, it doesn't have the same cachet, or it won't propel you into stardom the way the Tonight Show did.
Yeah, it's true.
I know a comedian that was on, it was David Letterman. He was on with Letterman, and this might have been the biggest thing to ever happen. And then he told me a story. The next day, he's way upstate New York, like in the middle of nowhere, and someone comes running over to him. He was yelling, I don't want to say his name, but starts yelling his name. And he goes, "That's me, that's me." And he comes running and goes, "I was at your wedding like 2 months ago." The guy nobody even saw him. And it was Letterman. So it's just weird how, yes, Marla, in the day when there was, 4 networks to watch and everybody in the world was watching Johnny Carson, you could hit it. The problem is our 500 channels today.
Right.
Right.
You have your own TV show and nobody recognizes you. It's just weird. It's weird.
So how do you get the recognition that was so instantly available with Tonight? How do you do that?
A lot of
Instagram.
Social media has become the format now.
You need something to go viral.
Yeah.
You need something to hit that people recognize. Years back, we have a Staten Island comedian, Vic DiPotetto, hit it huge with just the 40 seconds of that bread and milk. And that launched his career. He does work hard, though. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
When you get your 15 minutes of fame, you have to know what to do with it, and you have to keep running with it. And you can't just sit back and think the world isn't going to pass you by, because they do. So, I'm just waiting for my 15 minutes. Once you get that 15 minutes, I know I'm going to run with it. Right, Marla?
Absolutely. I'm waiting for it, but you also have to produce so much content, and you have to go over and above board. And just piggybacking on what Paul and Rich said about the social media, you have to come up with content. And, I've always felt it's so much, and I don't want to annoy people by putting stuff out. And it's like I do a web series and I have to send out emails, and I feel like, I don't know, did your friends ever send out those Christmas letters? You get these typed notes about how great their lives were.
Yes.
I feel like I'm doing it every week, and people
really
are going to, and then I don't want to see who unsubscribes from my email blast, and then, or my Instagram
I need all 3 of your addresses.
Right.
So you can.
So let me bring it around to this. What's taboo? What is a subject that no one touches, that you don't think anyone ever will touch?
Maybe except Louis C.K. I would say pedophile, pedophilia. I think honestly, it is so politically correct now. You can't make fun of anything but yourself, except when you're on Long Island.
That's interesting.
I teach
You
my
all
students that you could always make fun of yourself, but
Yeah.
you want to stay away from politics unless that's your venue. Like Bill Maher is left, and Dennis Miller is right. So I mean, that's what their audience is. It took years to build that audience to where you could be bold enough. But I mean, even if whether you like Trump or not, and if I'm on stage and I'm bad mouthing him, even the audience that hates Trump will sit there and go, "Who's he to tell me his political views?" They don't.
Right.
To me, I never went that direction at all because I didn't want to risk. You don't want to lose 50% of your audience. Dolly
Right.
Parton said that she will not allow anyone to know her political beliefs. She goes, "Why would I lose 50% of my audience?" And she's very successful the way she is. So kind of, I heed that advice.
A lot of the venues now, the venues that we perform at, actually will tell us in advance. When I'm putting a show together, they're like, just want to make sure that the comedians understand we can't have any political jokes. We can't
Mhm.
have religion is another. The adage is generally, if you can make fun of yourself, and what does that mean? I can make fun of myself. I can make fun of being Italian. I can make fun of being Catholic because I'm Italian and I'm Catholic. But
Yeah.
I cannot make fun of Muslims or other religions or ethnicities. It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Do you guys think if Don Rickles, would he be successful today if he was just starting out, or even Lisa Lampanelli?
Well, Lisa Lampanelli if she was, well, she already pivoted and is no longer doing her act anymore. I mean,
Yeah, she's a wellness person.
Right. She's like a motivational speaker.
Well, what about somebody like Mel Brooks who makes fun of everything except one topic? And the one topic that even Mel Brooks won't touch, and he came close when he did Springtime for Hitler, but he won't touch the Holocaust.
Right.
And he
the
said,
reason Springtime for Hitler was so funny, it was so bad that it was funny. If you could actually, but you have to still be humorous. If you watch Blazing Saddles now, wow! I was watching it the other night. It was so ethnically.
Yeah.
I mean,
very off color.
Yeah.
It's really.
You forget. Its day, it's great, but I don't know if it's cringeworthy because it was still funny. But you know what? Real quick, I just want to say one thing. What I noticed is there's a comic out there now who.
Name.
No, I can't.
I'm teasing.
But this guy, you may even know it just by me saying it. He's, I did a show with him. Half the audience loved him, and the other half cringed. Now, what was happening is it was an age gap. Under age 30, they did not like him. Over the age 30, they loved him because it was ethnic kind of humor. So it's a different age bracket. There's certain jokes that we could do. Paul and I could drive to Pennsylvania where they're gonna love anything a little bit risque or whatever, but not Long Island. New Yorkers are very savvy to that, and they don't. That's what I think is there's a difference. You have to know your audience.
That's correct.
Yeah.
You need to know your audience, and I will tell you this. The 50+ comedy tour is a perfect example. When we do a show at like a 50+ community, the comedians are excited because they know that they can do certain material that maybe they haven't done in a couple of years, but some of their favorite material, because they know that audience will accept it and will enjoy it, and they'll be able to perform. But they know they can't do that at a comedy club because of the mixed audience. So to Rich's point, you need to know your audience. Absolutely.
Can I just jump in? I
Yeah.
was working cruises and cruise ships, and there's like a triple laundry list of things you can't talk
Restrictions.
about.
Yeah.
I concur with all of you guys. I don't like to talk about politics because who am I to share my views? And I don't want to alienate anybody, but being on cruise ships, it's like you can't make fun of anything, particularly, first of all, you can't talk about Trump and you can't talk about fat people. And you're there on a cruise ship where people are in their like food addictions, and it's
No, you're
all
doing all
about
your buffet
drinking.
material.
Yeah, I said, oh, you're supposed to walk 10,000 steps. So I walk around the buffet like a couple of times, but you see people that you don't even see their feet because they're on those jazzy scooters and they look
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
remember those snowballs, the Hostess cupcakes, the pink with the, with the coconut, and you would peel them off. That's what they look like at the buffets, and you can't make fun of that stuff. And also on Paul's point about the over 50 community audience, you could be totally like, you can skate on being politically incorrect, but it's the young, the 30 or the 30-ish millennials, no sense of humor. I hate generalizing, but they are so sensitive and they get so offended, even if you're making fun of yourself. It's, I find that really annoying.
Yeah.
So
They
I
like.
heard a story. Go ahead.
there was a time when people would go up to the Catskills, and when I was a kid, we did the same thing. And you go up there, and a lot of comics, I mean, hilarious. They would make fun of every single person in the audience, and they would
Sure.
make fun of all the eating and all the crazy food that was plate on top of plate on top of plate. And people were his tears rolling down their faces because they were hearing themselves, and they were laughing at themselves. And the ability to laugh at yourself is really, it can be a good audience. It's not just about being a comedian who can stand up and laugh at himself, right? It's or herself. You've got to be an audience person who can also recognize the foibles that the comic is illustrating through the act. So what is it? You're talking about millennials. Everybody complains about the millennials. What is it about them?
I think they've grown up in a different environment. I'm sorry. I'm quick. It's the teachings in the school, the teaching in school. My kids actually don't see color. And, if I make a slur or whatever in jest, they're like, that is not cool. I think it's that generation, that, you can't make fun of anybody, they don't like it,
Rich is
Anybody
right.
else?
That's how they're taught in the schools, and so it's much more the environment. It's just the way that they were brought up. It's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all went home to a racist father. No, I'm kidding.
It's my dad is my parents relocated to North Carolina, and my father would always say, I don't think anybody in this state has mirrors. This place is called the fat ass state. And I'd be like, have you looked in the mirror, Dad? It's but, and I would say you got to be careful because it's an open carry state as well. And people are so, God forbid you make fun of and of them, even if you're doing it through yourself. Everybody just is so jacked up and sensitive and afraid of being offended. And then the flip side of that, it's, you don't know how they're going to react. There's been situations where comedians have been attacked on stage. Or death threats. It's nuts, and it's just spilling over into society. I mean, that guy in the 50-cent store or the dollar store said you can't come in if you don't have a mask on, and this guy felt like, his civil duty or civil rights or his a personal affront, and he was like, you just insulted me, and pulled out a gun. It's I think the pendulum has swung so far the other way. People just have to lighten up a little bit. And differences are what makes us funny. Italians and the Jews and the Asians, everybody has their own way of doing things. So
were the comics who made you laugh growing up, or even the comics that were there before you were born, but that you would see their acts and they cracked you up?
Okay.
Rich?
Rich, you want to go?
Real quick, I grew up watching all the old ones. I loved Red Skelton, Marx Brothers. Also, when I was a kid, there were reruns of like Abbott and Costello.
Yeah.
I watched everybody. Like I said, I watched that Tonight Show. I probably have seen Jerry Seinfeld's first time on the Tonight Show. I probably have seen, I used to love Jay Leno when he used to come on as a guest or a guest host. Everybody, my favorites, the old ones. I love. Old humor is different. It's funny.
So you modeled your humor on those people, would you say?
I think I have my own brand of humor. My humor is very self-deprecating, very. I mean, and it's almost I think that there's a naturalness to it. Like I do a thing with chapsticks that looks like I just made it up. Like I was putting on chapstick and then I offer it to somebody in the audience. So I try to make everything look.
How's that working out for you?
What?
That's one of my favorite bits that you do.
Because when you wear the mask, your lips get really chapped.
Now I have to go like this and lift her up. I don't understand. What is he doing under there?
No more side bags, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'll go. When I was growing up, I was probably like 10 years old. I became obsessed with Steve Martin, and it was when he started to do these appearances on TV. And I remember I grew up in Queens, and my relatives on Long Island had HBO, but at the time it was called Home Box Office. If anybody doesn't know what HBO stands for, and they were having
brown box with the buttons.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what it was.
Yeah.
That's what it was, the Home Box Office. And they had a Steve Martin like comedy special. It was him at some comedy club in on the West Coast. And I literally, my mother took me out to go to stay over at my aunt's house so I could stay up and watch it. And she would let me stay up. I was like 10 years old. I would stay up and watch every appearance that he did on like the Tonight Show or late night television. I just became obsessed with him. And I remember VHS tapes weren't even invented yet. I remember having like an old tape recorder. You know the ones like they used to have in school, the AV department? I had one of those, and I would record the audio and listen to it. And I used to memorize his act and perform it for my family. I even had an arrow through the head. 10 years old.
And you played that cassette for everybody? Is that when you hit play and record at the same time?
Correct. The red button was the record. But you had to play. You had to hit it with the play and record.
That is funny.
That was a long way to say Steve Martin.
Marla doesn't even know what we're talking about.
No, Marla has no clue. She has no
that's
idea.
right, because I'm 35.
She's a millennial. She's so annoying.
Yes. No, I'm an exennial. That's they straddle millennial to Gen X. I'm Gen X. Yeah, it's exennials. But my dad was a huge comedy fan, and I always thought Alan King, who actually gave me my first break, fellow Long Islander. But Buddy Hackett, Phyllis Diller, all the old time, there was Sophie Tucker. Like my dad was, I think, a historian because he introduced me to all the old time Sid Caesar, Mel Brooks. So that's what I grew up on. And it was seeing Barbara Streisand, who's not a comedian, in Funny Girl. I was like, oh my God, a Jewish girl can have a career. There you go.
Yeah.
I think what's so fascinating, Regina, is that because people ask us this all the time, assuming that because someone, a comedian, influenced you, that now your style of comedy is going to reflect that. And to Rich's point and to Marla's point, that doesn't seem to be the way that it works. It's like Steve Martin to me was an inspiration. My comedy is nothing like Steve Martin. I don't do anything on stage that's even remotely like what a Steve Martin performance would have been like. I don't play the
You don't.
I don't play the
Great
banjo.
point.
that question really
Banjo.
that question really is not really asking. I'm not asking anyway. I know I asked you, Rich, if they were influences on you, but in fact, what I'm asking you is, what makes you laugh? Which one, these comedians made you laugh? Why? What was it about them that made you laugh? Whether or not you integrated that into your soul and then it got recycled into whatever it is that you can
Right.
do to make others laugh. But what makes you laugh? Does raunchy
I
humor?
don't know. I love very sharp humor. I love dry humor. There's a joke, that as a matter of fact, I do in this comedy series that I do with this other comedian. But like, I'll tell you what's really funny to me. A woman goes up to another woman at a wake and says, "I have one word for you." A woman goes up to a widow at a wake and says, "I have one word for you, plethora." And the widow says, "Oh, thank you. That means a lot." And to me, that is a great joke. I just love very dry sense of humor. So, and I loved Steve Martin growing up. I loved all these guys. I also loved Jerry Lewis, because Jerry Lewis, as a child, when I used to watch the movies, I remember seeing one called, what's the one? Mr. Woolley, where he was the magician and the little boy, the Asian boy in it. Well, anyway, I cried in that movie. So if you can Jerry could make me laugh or cry. And, at 10 years old, I saw what a tearjerker, was, and so if you could hit me like that and get deep, dry humor, I love it all. I love the Marx Brothers too. So I guess any of it influenced me. I just loved comedy,
I think everybody does. And back in the day when I was a little girl, I remember that they had comics used to do their routines on LPs, and you would buy a record book and you would listen to them. And so there was nobody, if you had the pleasure of seeing them on the Ed Sullivan Show, or you had the pleasure of seeing them on
Now,
hearing
who's
them.
that?
Who's what?
Ed? I'm
Ed.
kidding.
Did I just freeze?
I'm kidding.
Oh, Toady Fields. I forgot about Toady Fields. She was like so many of my aunts. Big, loud, and I was like, oh my God, I hope I don't become like that when I get older. And now I feel like I'm turning into Mrs. Kravitz, like,
Not yet.
It's the world according to Marla.
You're still okay, Marla. Don't worry.
That's so funny.
Is actors, serious actors, professional actors will always tell you that in their opinion, comedy is harder than drama. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
I agree.
And yet it's
because you're creating your point of view and you're bringing it out and you're showing a bit of yourself and you're not hiding behind somebody else's words. And the metaphor I use for stand-up comedy is going bungee jumping without a change of underwear, because you never know what's going to happen.
Oh, right. There's an image. So
scatologic, bodily functions.
We're gonna.
Rich, did you?
More coffee.
Drama
Rich.
for me is, I don't know if I could do drama.
You don't think you could?
I took 12 years of acting classes, and the last class I took, we did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest,
Right.
and we did the whole 2-hour thing. It was so difficult for me. I'm Rich Walker on stage, just like Kevin James. No matter what movie you see Kevin James in, he's Kevin James, where I can't become another person. It's very difficult for me to pull it off. Comedy-wise, in sketches or whatever, I could do it. But I don't think, if I had to play a serious drama scene, like, it's like watching Adam Sandler become a dramatic actor. It's just...
He just did. You didn't like that?
Uncut Gems.
Right.
I know. Was it good?
Yeah, he got a lot of accolades for that one.
He did. And Eddie Murphy
But
made
like
that.
you see,
right?
Ray Romano is like, he's being serious now. It's not. I don't.
Can I tell you?
Yeah.
He made a Mark Duplass movie. It was called Paddleton, where he played like a guy on the spectrum, and it was a buddy movie. He was absolutely incredible in it, like a tour de force performance.
Wow.
Truly, I was blown away. Paddleton by Ray Romano. It's one of those movies. I lost my best friend. His name was Sam Brown, to pancreatic cancer, and we had that relationship. But this movie, it's hauntingly, incredibly moving. So I suggest anybody go see it. Ray was astonishing in it.
Paddington?
Paddleton, Paddleton.
The one with the bear with the red hat?
I don't know.
The English bear with the raincoat.
Oh,
no, that's
Paddington.
That's Paddington.
Oh.
Right, Rich. He was Paddington.
I'm teasing you. I get it. Paddleton.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you another question.
Okay.
Because in our conversation, Paul and I touched on the past, the history of comedy. You have had females, most notably, of course, Joan Rivers in recent times, but over the years, I mean, I could count on the fingers of one hand like Phyllis Diller, and you mentioned Toady Fields. There was Moms Mabley. But there weren't a whole lot who were performing, who were household names, who became successful to that degree. In more recent times, yes, you've got stand-ups who you can actually mention their names. People will have name recognition. First of all, why do you think that was? And why do you think that it's changed? Why are women freer to become stand-up comics today when maybe they weren't so free back in the day? Or was there another reason?
Marla? Rich?
No. Rich, you want to go first?
Real quick. But the reason why, back in the day, you had some of the greatest, I don't know if you call them stand-up comedians, but comedic actors, Carol Burnett, Lucille Ball, Mary Tyler Moore. They were hysterical. And then, but I think there was a chauvinism back then. It was a man's world. And
back then,
there's a difference, number one.
Well, but you can't deny there's some very funny female comedians now, but they were then. They just weren't given the venues to do it. That's what I think.
They were comic actresses, and they didn't put themselves on a stage. Lucille Ball didn't get on a stage as Lucille Ball to be funny. She got a script, and she became the character. So, and that's hysterical. And Carol Burnett, apparently Carol Burnett just recently did at the Tiller Center here on Long Island, she did a set. Did anybody go see her or hear about it? But I heard that she was very, they loved her. We happened to have done our gala right after her.
I wish I knew that.
Yeah, she was.
Me too.
$5,000. It was a benefit fundraiser.
How much?
It was a lot of money.
Now you know why we didn't go.
Comedy festival show. You don't pay that kind of money.
Yeah, people up here were alerted. I missed that one.
Exactly.
But Carol Burnett was unbelievable. I can still watch Carol Burnett, Mrs. Swiggins. That makes me laugh. That was I think one of the funniest shows. And I still watch Lucy when I catch it.
True. But again, she does not get out on a stage the way you three do. She does not get up on a stage as Carol Burnett and just try to make people laugh cold, not behind a script, not behind a TV script or a movie script. Or do you understand what I'm trying?
Yeah.
Right. It was a sign of the times.
Women have always been. I think that's the issue. The question is, you've got Marla here today, and she's toured with Chelsea Handler, and knows every other female comic who's out there, and Judy Gold is out there, and there are people out there who are doing the thing, but they're not reading off scripts. They're writing their own material, and they're reading, and they're doing their material, and they're responding to audiences live. That's a different art form, isn't it? So why is
Oh,
it that not
sure.
sure? Exactly.
Very much so.
I don't know.
So,
But I,
Tell us why you don't like female comics.
who said that?
I'm
you know
teasing.
why I don't like female comics? No, I'm
Why?
kidding.
Do you like
No, I'm
female
teasing.
comics, Marla?
Oh,
What do you think of
absolutely.
other female
Absolutely.
comedians? What do you think of other?
Well,
Do you think you're
one of
funniest
my,
on the show?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Carrie Carabas.
Yeah.
We've been friends since I started comedian. She makes me pee in my pants with laughter. Like I am doubled over. She is so funny. I like Wanda Sykes. Sebastian Maniscalco is another
Yeah, you used to be a woman.
comedian. Yeah, he used to be a woman. Thank you. But no, that was a joke. I don't know. I love people that are big and physical. But there's so many funny females now because I just think that the society and the world and how everything has changed and moved forward, but then taken a few steps backwards.
Absolutely, that's correct. Things really did change. Marla even mentioned before when she was trying to get into the Comedy Cellar that one of the comments was, well, we have a brunette female comedian already on the roster, and we're not going back, that long ago. That that was that
like
not that long ago. That's like yesterday.
So,
that's like yesterday.
Can I say one thing?
It was like the mid-90s.
I love female comedians. I wouldn't pay money to go see one, but I love them when.
All right. But all kidding aside for 1 second, and that should be the title, all kidding aside. Is there an advantage? Is there material that a woman can handle that a man won't handle and vice versa? Is there, or do those lines blur today?
I don't think so. I don't feel that way.
Yeah. I think,
I don't feel that way.
Women can't talk about their penises. That's a problem. Or peeing on little diskettes in the male the men's I'm sorry. I am so tired. I can't get my words out. One time a guy walked up to me and goes, you know what you should do some material on? And I said, what? He goes, those little diskettes in the men's urinal that you have to try and hit. And I looked at him like, why?
What?
I don't pee standing up. That kind of thing. But but I mean, there's so many things that are very male, and then there's that are from a female's perspective. That's where you make the distinction, in my humble opinion.
I think those lines have blurred a lot, though, in the last 20 years. To be honest with you, I think men are much more in touch with their feminine side, and with regard to understanding material. Now, we do a show called Mom's Night Out, where we have 4 female comedians and when we market a show like that, we don't know who's going to come to the show, but 99% of the audience is female. And I've attended those shows because as a producer, and it's amazing how the audiences, because there are really no men in the audience, the women are so much more comfortable laughing at certain material, and the comedians are so much more comfortable presenting that material because it's not a mixed audience. So it's back to the whole concept of knowing your audience. And so when those female comedians know that they're going to be on that particular show, they know who the audience is going to be. And so they raise the bar in terms of the type of material that they will do. And it works because, again, it's things have changed. When you have a mixed audience, everything has to be kind of almost like homogenized to a point.
Yeah.
Can I just tell you, as a female, I love doing women's shows because, to piggyback on your point, Paul, is you can be really honest, and you can make fun of your partners. You can really highlight the differences between men and women, and it's fun because in a normal audience, if you say something, I did something about manscaping, and I could just see this woman in the front was like, oh my God, because maybe she's had that argument with her husband or partner, like, you better do something, otherwise I'm going to call the zookeeper. It's so good. I love doing women's shows.
Can I say one
you're
thing?
absolutely right.
With men, completely different. Paul could attest to this. You don't want to do any all men show, like the audience is a men's club or
The worst.
Cops.
Are they really?
They are
The worst.
the worst. They become animals if they're
Horrible
white,
audience. The worst audience you'll ever perform for.
Really?
Ever. And they're
As a
like,
matter
they'll
of fact, some comics turn it down. Am I right, Paul?
Yeah,
They won't
absolutely.
do it. When you go-
I turn down those jobs. You don't even know about it because I wouldn't be. The audience is terrible. They heckle. They bring you in to do a show to entertain, and then they proceed to heckle you.
They just want to rip you up.
Brutal.
And I know they have a meeting on how to rip you up before the show. They're the worst. There's some big name comics. You give them a lot of money. You go, look, I got a bachelor party. No way.
Doesn't
Wow.
work.
But women,
Does not work.
Like what Marla is saying, women love. Women support each other. Men don't support each other.
That's correct. That's been my
men don't
experience.
care. Their fun is actually making you look bad and make you leave that place with your tail between your legs because you're so upset about it. They love that. Like I love watching another comedian bomb. I love it.
You've been to my shows.
I love it. What?
You've been to my shows.
Yeah. So I love having Paul go up and MC that show.
Exactly.
So good.
Anyone could go on after me. Exactly.
Do you remember your bombs?
No. What is that like?
Sure. I remember a few. I remember.
They're seared in your.
I remember doing a show when I first started. I was a pool club, and we're in the gazebo, and they had all the picnic tables out in front. It was about 300 people around this
Sounds
pool.
like fun.
And it was like a summer night. Sweat was dripping off of me, and somebody in the front row turned to the husband and goes, I saw it in slow motion. He's bombing. He's bombing.
Oh no. Terrible.
I had something that was horrible. It was at the Harmony Club, and it was, a Jewish audience, very well off. And I did it with Corey Kahaney and Susie Essman. And I wound up getting the gig. And I said, Corey, you go first, I'll go second. And she's like, you can't follow me. And I was like, are you kidding me? Go ahead. She goes up and kills crickets. It's like 300 people in the room. And I made fun of this thing called the Jewish whisper, because all of a sudden I hear, Morty, she's terrible. And I got off stage, and that's when I threw up. I was crushed. And Susie Essman said, that's it, I'm not doing comedy anymore. And Corey Kahaney was like, I told you you couldn't go after me. And I was like, I'm not going to be friends with you anymore. And then I ran in, and I threw up, and Susie came running after me, and she said, you better get on stage tomorrow ASAP, because if you don't,
that's the best thing to do.
She was absolutely right.
No,
right.
She came out to be, she accepted an award from us at one of our galas.
Oh, yeah.
And she
I remember that.
Yeah, and this was over at the Space in Westbury, the old that place, we were actually the first event over there, and she got up, and in speaking to her before she went up, she was one person. In seeing her get up on stage, that's another person. Do you
It's
not?
a persona.
It is a persona, and do you not feel that sometimes that you still, even though it's you, it's the you that you're prepared to share with your audience?
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel that way.
All right. Last question, and this is the one. So how are you coping in this new age of COVID shutdown? And is it too soon for COVID jokes?
No.
No.
No, I'm trying to write a COVID joke every day just to have some new material when eventually I get back on stage.
When will
Because
that be? You let me know.
2023, I'm thinking everything should be.
I'm beginning to feel that way.
I'm working on those calendar dates now.
No, but
Paul, how does the Berkshire Comedy Festival? I'm still
It's-
hoping that happens.
It's going to be postponed to the fall. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for them to.
You didn't tell me that. No, he didn't. I'm the one thing I'm worried most about is forgetting my act. I don't even know how rusty I'm gonna be when I go back on stage.
Oh, that's interesting.
I am like, I'm actually flipping out. Like, you know how like you miss a week after you go on vacation, you don't do comedy, and then you come back and you're like,
your timing's off. Yeah.
Everything is off. You know, there are some comics that remember Murray Langston, the unknown comic. I met him. He said he used to take off July and August just so he could come back fresh, you know? And he goes, you're so much better or sharper when you come back. I can't, I'm 1 week without doing comedy. I'm climbing a wall. I am getting comfortable not doing comedy now because I'm home and you fall into a routine. You know, in the first couple of weeks, I was climbing a wall to get out on stage and do something because I was afraid. Now, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. That actually is a serious question for comedians. I'm wondering how many comedians will actually come back to the comedy world. You know, it's a big, you lose courage. You know, I haven't been on stage in what, 2 months now? And it's, who knows? But, you know, I don't know. Good question, though.
That is a good question. Can I jump in?
Yes.
Please.
I don't think it's so much. I don't think it's so much like writing COVID material. It's really you taking the situation. I'm living in an apartment with my husband and a dog, and I'm on the 18th floor, and I have to mask up and glove up and dealing with people in my apartment building. And I live in a no dog building, and I wound up getting, you know, a support dog from my therapist, and I'm very open about that. And a woman said to me, and I live in this snotty Upper East Side building, and I came off the elevator with my dog, and she goes, oh, I didn't know they allowed dogs in the building. And I said, well, if you're crazy, they do. Hey. I got walked out. So that falls under the umbrella of, you know, I take a situation and it's COVID related rather, but then also how, you know, being in such a tight quarters. I mean, you guys are on Long Island. You have the benefit and the luxury of not being, you know, have all these people up your ass. And I'm used to traveling. I was on about 70 planes in the last 2 years and going out and doing stuff. And my husband traveled, and now we're here, and it's like the stuff, you know, if he leaves a drop of pee on the toilet rim, I'm out of my mind. And it's like, I can use that to find humor about how not to explode and, you know, kill somebody, because they're saying apartment dwellers, the divorce rate is sky high. I said, but they're not reporting on the homicide rates, and I really don't want to become a statistic. So there's a lot to farm. Do you guys watch Stephen? Do you watch Stephen Colbert?
Yes.
Now he's doing Stephen Colbert. And people have asked me, and I'm doing a Zoom stand-up show tonight, and it's my first one, and I've been really hesitant to do it. But when you watch Stephen Colbert, and he delivers really funny jokes, and there's no audience participation, it's kind of like wah wah, but you know that they're funny. I'm nervous, and I don't know if you guys feel about this, but not having the feedback of people laughing, like, because on a Zoom call, when one person talks over the other, you know, there's like a disconnect. So I would be willing to try, but I'm really hesitant because I know I react if I don't get a reaction to a joke after 20 plus years.
What would
goes away?
If using the technology, like right now, Carly is on this call. She's the one who's hosting this call for us. The one cut and action. But you don't see her. But if she unmuted herself, she would laugh. You would hear her. What happens? Everybody.
I think that would help. I think that would help. What were you saying, Rich?
We would have to hear, you know, I've done shows already, you know, on Zoom. I've done it for the healthcare workers, national healthcare workers. I'm sorry, I forgot what it was. But they had about 80-something people all watching, but I could hear them. They had to unmute themselves so I could hear the laughter. And, you know, I was actually scrolling across the screen because I'm doing this on a telephone. It's only 4 people. I can only see 4, but if there was 8, I'd have to keep flipping the screen, you know, which I was doing. And it was keeping me going. You know, it's very difficult because you're not live. You're live, but you're not in front of an audience, you know, that you're feeding off of and seeing reactions. So what I was doing was I kept scrolling the screen. It went well. It went well. So, I mean, if you put it together and Paul, you know, was interested in doing it, then I would gladly give it a shot. You know, what do you got to lose? You know.
Did you stand while you were doing it, or were you sitting?
I sat right here.
You did?
I did my business like this, you know, doing my hand stuff, and I knew to back up on anything that I was doing facial. You know, like with my hands that I needed to do, so they could see my hands. So just you have to be aware of your humor. You know, that you have to somehow back up. Well, you know, come close.
Hey, Rich, when you said you could hear the laughter, but
Yeah.
did you, because if one of us talks over, it gets, you know, you mute out each other. So by hearing the laughter, did that mess up your timing?
I didn't realize that when I was doing it. So they may not have heard. Maybe that's why I wasn't doing well. They couldn't hear me with everybody laughing. Like, well, everybody else was, that's weird. I don't know.
I tell you what's weird is that anybody was laughing at one of your shows. That's the part I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around.
Thank you, all of you, for being with us today and for sharing your thoughts and your history and your fears and everything to do with being a successful comic who engages with an audience in the most personal and in these days very difficult to imagine how that's going to play out. And we're trying to imagine it now. But thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Regina.
Thank you. Looking forward to being live again.
Me too. Bravo, bravo.
Thank you so much.